I see that as humility. I see that because I think that a lot of times our ego drives our actions, and because we want to be right because we're the dad or because we know better than you. And but when you have that, sometimes you miss out on, again, that true experience. And so if if you can be humble and just understand that you don't know everything and live your life like an open book and like a sponge, I do think that you will increase your discernment and therefore increase your experience. And
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hands on Logos podcast. This is where we discuss current events, personal growth, and any other random topic that crosses our minds. Our goal is to have a meaningful discussion that help us to see the topics we discuss more clearly. Our hope is we can help you expand your self-awareness, develop your critical thinking, and learn to be less reactive to the world around you. And most importantly, remember, be curious. If you like what you hear, like this video and subscribe to the channel. If you have any feedback, please leave a comment. We want to hear what you think. We appreciate you. There it is, Chris. I know. Come on, guess what day this is, Chris?
Is Podcast Friday.
That is right. 4/25/25, a very, very special day. And this is podcast number, I believe, 22 for us.
Double deuces, yes.
That's right. That is really cool. And we have a guest coming on today at some point.
Yeah,
I don't know.
he's running a little late, but he'll be by later. And I think he'll be an interesting person to talk to. We can talk about AI, entrepreneurship. I actually had a thought about talking about logistics, since his background is logistics and kind of supply chain and what's going on with China. I thought that'd be an interesting thing.
Oh, that'd be kind of cool. Yeah.
If we can get to it, that is. I mean, we always seem to go off on tangents and never get to everything we want to talk about. Even in 2 hours, we don't get to everything.
Yeah. So then, what do we want to talk about today? I feel kind of feisty, so I feel like I'd like to fight and argue with you about what do we want to argue about today?
So we did talk. We were talking about Toastmasters a little bit yesterday, and we didn't record that, but it brought up a topic that was interesting. Because what was your speech about today in Toastmasters?
So I've been studying Greek for about a year, and basically what I'm doing with the Greek is, as you get older, you know how old people do crossword puzzles and stuff like that? This is my crossword puzzle. This is my version of a crossword puzzle. learning Greek. And so I'm very slow. So, just to, I do want to be a little bit careful, but not too careful, because I'd like to get some engagement from the audience. But many, many people view the King James Bible as like the only Bible. It is the official word of God because that's all they know. And I'm here to tell you that it is a translation, and it's a very good translation. But just like every translation, it's got its problems as well. It's got its good stuff and its bad stuff. And so one of the things that I want to talk about is about the verse John 3:16, which is probably one of the most famous verses in the Bible. Probably everybody knows it, would be my guess. If not, they know it. For God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son. And that I don't think is translated correctly since I've been studying Greek. So that's what I gave a speech in Toastmaster about. And we could talk about that a little bit. We could go out any direction about this.
Well, so I think it's good to follow up on that. So actually, during your speech, one thing that occurred to me, which I was going to say and I forgot to say, was In-N-Out burgers. You know that on the back of every hamburger wrapper, at the bottom of the cups, they have different verses. And 3:16, I think, it's on the double or on the hamburger sleeve.
Oh, interesting. There you go. Yes, very famous verse.
They put that on there. But one of the things that came to light was, I know you. Can you explain why you want to study it in Greek? Why you want to learn Greek to study the Bible?
Yeah, so I'm kind of an engineer. I like to get... So in software, I don't know much about programming or software, but typically everything is built on tops of stacks of things, because ultimately everything starts with fundamental physics, and we kind of start bubbling ourselves up, and then we go to, Ohm's law, and then microprocessors, and they build software on top of that. And so in certain cases, you're so far abstracted away from the actual what is, And I'd like to, as a general rule, what I like to do to understand things better is I'd like to dig down as close to the bottom as I possibly, can. And certainly in this particular case, the original Greek text, it was written, by Greek people I don't know who it was written by. It's by the apostles in the first century, and it was written in Greek, something called Kini Greek, and which just translates to common Greek. And I have no idea why God chose that language, other than it just was that everybody spoke the language. It's just a really common language. There's nothing particularly great about Greek. It wasn't like a particularly amazing language for science, or it was just kind of the language everybody spoke at that particular time. And so I wanted to go in and actually study the original language written in to see if I could get some additional insights. Because whenever you translate something, there's always the potential for loss. Always, always, always.
Is it loss or is it... And what I'm thinking here is some words have different nuance or sometimes even multiple meanings.
Oh, absolutely. Almost every word has multiple meanings. Yes,
Right.
exactly.
And then there's grammatical things. What comes to my mind is I also, whenever I was talking to my grandmother in Japan, I would say, I'm going to go take a bath.
Yeah.
And it never made sense to her because you don't take a bath anywhere.
No, that makes sense.
You get in the bath. And in Japan, you get in the bath, right? You don't take a bath. It's like taking a dump. You don't take a dump, right?
Yeah.
You leave it behind.
Yeah.
So conceptually, we have a lot of ways of saying things which actually don't translate literally in the language you're speaking in.
Yeah, right. Because so much of this it's got to be culture, right? So I mean,
So how
like
much,
right now,
how much are
like
you
for
going to be
instance,
able to do?
well, for instance, like let me answer your question in a second. But like for instance, if we talk about, we're like, oh, just go Google it, right? Everybody knows what that means. You go back 100 years, and you'll be like, what are you talking about?
So in
And
500
then
years time, when the massive AI is running the world, and someone's going to say, "What does the word Google mean? Why? What do you
when you
mean
say
Google?"
Google it, what does that mean?
Yeah, I mean
Yeah,
the AI just gives you everything you need automatically. Why would you have to go look for anything? And why are you having a special word for looking it up on the internet?
I know, and it's funny because you probably remember this, Chris. We're kind of like old farts, right? Um, the telephones used to have like a dial, and they used to be actually plugged into a wall, or they didn't work.
Oh, over the weekend we went to an antique mall here in Orange, and my daughter had never been in there. She's really into kind of retro clothing right now,
Yeah,
and she saw there was a booth of all old phones and old record players and things like that, and it had a dial phone, and she's like, "How does this work?" And she's
yeah.
playing with the dial.
Like she's like it's not working. Does this work?
Yeah, it took her a moment to realize you actually have to physically meet. I said, and see, some phone numbers take a long time to dial because you have to wait for the dial to go all the way back.
Yeah, yeah,
949, our area code here would be a much longer one than like a 212.
yeah. And so I talked to my Greek. He's kind of the head of the whole Greek thing, and he's like, well, there's two main reasons why people misinterpret stuff. One is they just don't know. They just don't know the facts, right? They just make stuff up in their head, and it's just not even close to being true. That's a big problem. And then the second problem is that it's just a culture. They just see things through a different culture. I mean, if you're living in first century Rome or Greece, I mean, you think about things differently than we live right now. I mean, you just certain things would make sense that don't make sense to us, and things that make sense to us wouldn't make sense to them. So they've got this cultural difference as well too. So if you want to properly try to get as close as you can to interpreting, to getting the truth, or I used a word called exegesis when we said draw out truth that the original author meant. You've got to understand the culture, and you've got to sort of step into their shoes and their glasses to understand the world according to their eyes and not ours, right? So it's just certain things just would not make sense to us. And so there's always risk of getting things wrong when you translate. So I thought, well, at least what I do is I'll go at least back to the original language and take one of those obstacles away. And
Okay.
so now I got to learn the words, I got to learn the meanings of the words, and then I have to understand the culture. Yeah, there's a lot of potential to get things incorrect.
But one of the things you said, I think yesterday when we were talking about this, is you put a lot of value on the fact that the Bible is the spoken word of, or is the word of God, basically. It's the message from God to everyone.
Yeah, that's a completely different discussion, right? So
Yeah.
so step one is the dudes who wrote the thing translated into today. Can we understand what they meant? Like if we went back and talked to them in New Greek, would we get the same message? That to me is the minor thing, right? That and even then that's a pretty big one, but that is the minor issue. The big one is does God exist? And then did God inspire these men to write these particular words down, right? That's the much bigger one. And that
And you're saying
one,
that if you believe that, then that means that there is inherent value. There's something, I don't want to use the word supernatural, but something beyond just uh, an just a meaning of the fact that this is a book with a bunch of interesting content.
yeah, it's like a living thing. It's literally, I mean, what's the right way to say this actually? I mean, okay, let's go back to jujitsu. What the heck, right? I mean, right now my jujitsu master Alan, he's still alive, right? So I can call him and talk to him. But let's say it was a couple hundred years ago. Um, I mean, he is jujitsu. I mean, he doesn't know jujitsu. He like lives, eats, breathes jujitsu. He is a jujitsu master, actually. So it seems like to me, if I wanted to learn about jujitsu, I'd want to get as close to the source as possible. I wouldn't want to listen to other people. It's like, just man, go to the mountain, go to the man on the top of the hill that actually he didn't make jujitsu, but you know he's close enough to jujitsu. So I want to get as close to the source as possible, and I think any good engineer would want to do that, right?
I guess so, but I guess the idea is how you're valuing this is more than just as a historical text. Is
Oh
more
yeah,
than
right.
just it's full of good practice,
Hmm.
how to interact with other people in society, how to build a good society, uh,
Yeah,
as a source of ethical decision making, good and bad, good and evil, all of those types of things. You're placing a value on it beyond just what's written there, but also the fact that the source of it is something that makes it more than that.
yeah. So is the creator of all, is the creator of the entire cosmos, right?
Yeah,
And
it's
cosmos has different definitions. It could be universe, it could be world, it could be humankind. Different ways of doing that. But yeah, when you think of God as a supernatural being that exists outside of space and time, that literally just spoke everything into existence. Yeah. You know, if he wrote a book for me, I really want to read that book. Right. And I don't want to read a
yeah.
translation of the book. I want to read as close to the original as possible.
I understand your approach to this. I guess the distinction I have is I don't have a reverence for the book the way you do.
Yeah, right.
I don't consider to me it is I can look at it much more from a historical text viewpoint, and I would judge the content based upon what value I think it has for society, what value I think it has to the reader, and also another thing that occurred to me when I was thinking about this is I would also judge it on how consistent it is throughout.
Yeah, right,
Because
right.
we
No,
talked about consistency is part of what builds trust.
yes.
So when someone goes and points out some kind of a logical fallacy or historical fallacy, between the Old Testament and the New Testament or other aspects of it, I'm often like, it doesn't sway me overly one way or the other, but to me, that is a point that needs to be addressed. For me to have a confidence level, a trust level, I think to the level that you have at with it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a super good point. So I don't think it's possible to prove it either way, right? I mean, I can go
Hmm.
through sort of my logical thinking process as to how I got there, and it's more of like a Jordan Peterson move. I sort of act as if it's true, um, barring any other. I mean, if you give me a better explanation, I mean, I would change my mind. I mean, I'm definitely open. It's not like I'm stuck on this, but so far it's the best answer that we've had. So just from a starting point, right? If you give me two options that somehow the universe, the cosmos, just poofed into existence and nobody knows why or how, it just somehow just popped from nothing into something. I'm like, okay, I need the mechanism for that particular, as opposed to it was designed and created by a super intensely powerful being, actually. Because I do base on the argument that it is here. We are here. This is as real as, I can imagine things would be. Now, we could be in a simulation. I have no idea underneath, but it appears real to me. And I think we're here in the best way I can define it, right? Kind of, I think, therefore I am. And so to me, it just follows rationally from every other bit of data and science I know that it had to have been created. It had to have been made by someone or something, as opposed to just being poof, just peered out of nothing, out of randomness. I have a hard time buying that. If you give me those two choices.
Yeah, and I would argue that the randomness is the more logical one.
Yeah, I don't know how you get there in your head.
And that doesn't mean that I can't say that there is some kind of an intelligence or supernatural force that's involved in it, per se.
Yeah.
But today in Toastmasters, one of our speakers made a comment that the chance of you being born, is less than you winning the lottery.
Okay, yeah.
And I'm like, well, there's a fault in that. The chance of you existing the exact way you are today is in fact so off the charts that it is much more rare than the chance of you winning the lottery, because of all of the different things that came together to make you who you are today. Are the number of variables there are just infinite. So I understand that argument, but the chance of you being born and alive as a person are not necessarily that great, that much greater than anything else.
Well, here's what I would say. I would say it's 100% possible, right? Because I am here, which means, I am, right? So therefore,
well, he was trying to make the point that everyone's special, and every day is special. Every day is different, and to embrace it and to accept things. Or to embrace every day and to make it the most of it as you can. It was the point he was trying to get across. And so if you think of yourself not as just one of the masses, but as someone special, something that came together, by not by chance, but by some kind of design, then therefore you can take a lot more pride in things. And that was where he was coming from. Hey, Scotty.
Hey, hello.
Glad you can make it. Scotty, this is Scott. Scott, this is Scotty.
Hi, Scott. I can remember that.
Hello.
And Scott is in Arkansas. He used to live here in Southern California, but he moved a few years ago. And Scotty's from the Inland Empire, and I met him through one of the local Chamber of Commerce mixers, or one of the mixers here.
RBN, it's some networking, a networking club.
And
RBN. Yeah, I was in RBN. What's his name?
Okay, yeah.
I can't remember his name. What's that?
Joseph?
Yeah, Joseph. Yes, I was there for a long time. Yeah.
So we basically we ended up like staying an hour after every meeting, just talking about whatever the hell happened. So, now we're talking right now about the Bible, and we're talking about, I guess, the argument for why God exists. And Scott just made the argument for why he exists, and I'm making the argument for I can accept a world of total random chance. And that everything is random, and so we were kind of in that. I think we can pick that up anytime, so we'll take a break from that.
Yeah.
But
what's funny about that is one of the conversations on one of the podcasts that I've had. There was a kid named Elijah Stacy, and he suffers from a disease called Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. And he was a high school kid. He came in. He's in a wheelchair. He had two younger siblings. Both, one had actually passed away. Another one was very confined to a wheelchair, severely. And he proved he went off for a while on his proof of the existence of God, and it blew my mind because of his age. And the way that he approached that argument, it was a really, really eye-opening, interesting conversation. And this kid was over my head, so I was just like, wow, that's pretty amazing. And it is interesting because you're trying to prove something that uh, is kind of a personal. It's kind of a personal. I don't know if you call it relationship, but whether it's a relationship with God or the universe or your environment, I don't know. But it's like trying to see the unseen. So I don't know who's right.
Yeah.
Maybe we're all right at the end of the day. That's the other thing is sometimes there isn't a single thing. There's multiple things, and they could all be right. Maybe we're all in our own little universe, or maybe this is my universe, and you guys aren't real at all. I don't know.
It's possible.
We're
Yeah.
in the matrix.
Yeah.
That is
Um,
possible.
so, Scotty, can you give a little background of who you are and what you do, just so we have some context on what we can drill you on?
Yeah. So, I'm I'm a co-founder of I guess the most pressing thing. I'm a co-founder of an AI and software development company called MentorSoft, and we build AI instances to help businesses, do the heavy lifting, automate processes, and all of that good stuff. Before that, I was a financial advisor for 17 years. Also did real estate and loans, and been involved pretty heavily with Toastmasters for a while. I'm a magician member of the Magic Castle.
Oh,
Been doing that for 18 years, and so that's probably the coolest thing. But other than that, this is my studio. I have a recording studio at my house that I'm a wannabe musician as well. I suck at it, but here it is because at one point I'm gonna get good at all this stuff. Is what I keep telling myself. But at the end of the day, I do have a major driving force, and that's trying to make an impact. So again, one of the things I've invited you to as well is every Wednesday we have a kind of a personal development group that meets called Trajectory, and we've turned that into a streaming live podcast, and we have different speakers that come in, and the idea is they share anything that can help the trajectory of somebody else's life.
Hmm.
And I've just been in a bunch of circles, and I'm trying to improve that and go 100 miles an hour because I don't know about when the road is going to end. So I'm trying to make sure I get all my brodies and fishtails and wheelies out, while I can do it. So that's kind of that's why I have all these circles moving at this. That's basically it.
cool. No, I mean, because I know didn't you say you created a not-for-profit to help kids too?
Forgot. Yeah, so I have a nonprofit called My Unsung Hero Foundation, and then I'm the president of a nonprofit called SAC, which is Simple Acts of Care and Kindness. And we've built an app called Change the World app where instead of doing laps, like a jogathon and getting your uncle to sponsor you for a couple laps, this is getting your uncle to sponsor you for acts of kindness. And there's missions, and then the kids can run missions, and we've turned it into um basically a way for people to generate funds, a fundraising app. But before that, we've ran a pilot in a school, a private school, and we had a lot of really good feedback. So yeah, a lot of that's kind of tied because of the whole app development. So I've been on the board of that nonprofit for 18, I'm sorry, since 2011, so 14 years, and just recently became the president. And so I'm also very active with Rotary. I'm just active in everything. There's always something that I'm doing. And if I'm not, then I turn, these wheels inward, and then that leads to like depression and anxiety, and so as long as I can point them out somewhere else, then we're good.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, one of the things I was talking, I was texting Scotty yesterday, and I said, I think, I asked him if he knew of any AI groups, social groups, to
Mm.
interact with. And he mentioned one, but then he's saying, there's not a lot that he interacts with. And I'm like, maybe we need to start one. He goes, yeah, let's do it. So it's on our list now to start a group. And what got me thinking about this is at these events that we go to, these mixers or these social events, where the usually small business people, a lot of people really haven't thought about how to use AI at all.
Yeah.
I mean, they understand what ChatGPT is because that made the news, right? And they're seeing stuff, but aside from a little bit of dabbling with talking to chat, they're not doing anything.
Yeah.
And I'm like, even if you just sit down and use the free products that are out there that you can use, there is so much that you're capable of doing. And so I thought it would be interesting to have a place where people can kind of talk about how to use AI in their daily life. And then they could extrapolate, oh, I could use that in my business. I could use that here. I could use that there. And then if there's an interest in them going, they can either, it's so easy now. They could either make it themselves if they want to put it in the time, or they go find a company like yours. Or I know Scott. Scott is also working on an AI client as well. Finding a way to think about this, because I do think small business is going to be at the tail end of adopting some of this, and they need to be in earlier on.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jason, my partner, does this thing called I think it's Inland Empire AI Daily AI News, and he was talking about I think it was Microsoft said that you're going to be the things are moving where each person is going to be a CEO, and he's going to be the CEO of a bunch of AI agents. So you'll have
Yeah.
sales agent, you'll have the HR agent, you'll have and each person. And so instead of having to figure out how to do all of the automations and the things that we're doing and that we're tooling around with, we just tell our people, our AI agents, our army of AI agents, hey, go get this done, and then they go out and they get it done and they come back and report to us like a
Hmm.
like a CEO, and we just tell them this
Yeah.
and that, and if you
Yeah,
don't
Microsoft is
have
calling it like the new frontier or something like that. And I think it's the idea is that you could have a company of four people, and you kind of split up the job functions at the top amongst those four people, and then they have a team of 2,000 AI employees that go out and do all the work.
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
That's
where it's
pretty cool.
headed.
Yeah.
What
Well,
kind
the
of client do you have, Scott, or what are you working on?
Well, I just started. So my background was video production and then marketing automation. I had a studio in Irvine for 10 years. And
Oh,
so I used a lot of Infusion, and this is like over 5 years ago we did this. And so now I just have a couple of existing clients I just do a little bit of work for. But I've been in the software development pretty much my whole life and media creation. So
oh wow.
I think I'm not ready to retire yet. So I think I want to just launch back up and see if I can just make one last little bit of, impact or something. So probably next week or the week after, I'm going to start on developing an app in AI, some sort of, one of my clients has a problem where they get like a few hundred phone calls coming in a day and they've got like a few receptionists. And so I'm going to see if I can somehow have this AI thing can do all their work in an automated using telephony kind of way that ties into some backend SQL databases. And so
We're actually doing
that's
that right now for a a, a guy who is a business broker. He's a business
mm,
broker and SBA. He does both of them. So it's like a perfect storm because he knows how much somebody can get financed in order to buy your business. So he's like kind of the perfect broker to go out and pitch your business. But he gets so many calls. He's inundated. He's got like
yeah,
700 calls. And what happens with him is there's a lot of time wasters. So
yeah, yeah,
so he was, basically challenged us is if there's a way that we can get a answering service that can basically prioritize and go through his callers and basically, you know, the ones that he knows that have money that have are willing or are able or ready. So we're
yeah.
literally working that. So if you want help and uh, I'll introduce you to Jason because he is the brains of the operation. Let me not
Okay.
be. I'm not gonna try to act like I'm something I'm not. I am the hair. I'm the hair and makeup, but he's the brains.
There we go.
So yeah, and he's been an app. I've met him. He's been the app the CEO of a couple different app development companies. He's been coding for multiple 30 years, and he's been building software products, but that's been his major focus. So he has a very strong, solid understanding of all of that. And again, I think obviously you've been doing that too. So maybe there's a collaboration project or something. Who knows? Whatever.
Yeah, that'd be kind of cool. I just think my mind is there's just so much potential of this. It's like, are you familiar with a program called Infusionsoft, or I think they're called Keep now?
Yeah, you said that. No, I'm not. I'm not.
Yeah. I mean, remember when it first came into existence, it was super hard and complicated, but everyone wanted it because, the thought of being able to have a computer have an email marketing sequence was just like mind blowing. And
Oh
there's
yeah.
now everybody does it, right? So now it's
Yep.
like this AI is the next thing on top of that, which is really
Is it
cool. In
like
fact,
Zapier?
what's that?
Is it like Zapier?
That's Zapier. That's more of a tool that you can interface between different sort of technology. Like my
Yeah.
wife had something she calls something Kajabi she uses,
Oh
and
yeah.
then she
Yeah.
wants to text people. So I'm using Zapier to interface between Kajabi and simple texting to send texts out because I don't have an integrated thing. It's cool. I mean, Zapier can just integrate between hundreds of different things. It's like very
hmm
very cool. So
Well,
it's
I
not
had it.
necessarily AI, but it's awesome.
There was a CRM active campaign that I had set up for a body shop probably 6 years ago too, and I used Zapier, um,
Yeah.
tomato. I used to live on this road called Kanabe, or it's
Oh,
Nabe, depending on what mood I was in, but it was spelled Knabe. I don't know who's right, but it's always funny because everybody pronounces it differently.
yeah.
But I'm wondering if I had used that to connect with like different surveys and then
Yeah.
the email marketing and so I'm just trying to infusion. I'm trying to figure out what that is. If I
I think it's
played
now
around with
Keep.
something like that.
It was one of the original ones way back when. You could just go on Keep and take a look at it if you're interested. Um,
I
so now it's so fascinating because now we've really moved from companies that are doing like hardcore coding to now like what Chris says, you're a generalist in a sense. That now we're just cobblers, right? We just got baling wire and duct tape, and we sort of just duct tape all this other stuff and put it all together instead of like this full integration thing where you have. I remember working on teams of like 20 or 30 people that you'd like do everything from scratch, and we'd literally build up huge server rooms with this iron and millions of dollars of investments. Now you can go just do it an afternoon on Amazon or
You don't have to know any
whatever.
coding at all. I mean, the whole vibe coding movement, right? I mean,
ah
it's all, whatever vibe I want to do something like this. Let me just give you a little, a couple ideas. And I mean, you can single prompt code video games. Not, they're not great video games, but like, remember the old Centipede on Atari? You can
Yeah,
make that in one prompt.
was
yeah.
that
One
It's just
one prompt, no code.
yeah, isn't that
it's
nuts?
just it's just crazy the tool. So we got to sort of wrap our head around how can we use these new tools to solve these other problems. I think that's where the real skill set is going to be.
Well, I
Is
still
how do
think
you
there's going to be an issue with, because we're breaking these apart and we're using all these different agents and different AI tools. I'm still concerned about things like security and data and all that sort of thing because now we're not all in one system where we could put a wrapper around the system and say everything's protected. Now I've got all these APIs out there that are throwing data around everywhere,
Yep.
and I think we're going to go through another age of data security issues.
Yeah,
Chris,
you're gonna have to
that's always been the issue. That same issue. How do you do security, and then how do you get things to talk to each other? That's been just the
Yeah,
age old problem.
yeah, but I think that security is one of those things. If anyone wants a job for the next 20, 30 years, that's probably one of the areas they can be safe in.
Yeah, yeah. How do you secure data? I mean, because everything breaks. I mean, no matter what it is, no matter how secure you think it is, anybody can break into anything at some point. So
yeah.
I got a
Especially
letter
okay, so
from
speaking of that, the Willow chip, have you guys gone
the
down the
Willow
rabbit
chip.
hole of that
no,
at
I
all?
haven't heard of that. No.
Quantum
Oh, quantum. Oh, yeah. So
quantum
that
computing.
quantum chip company.
Yeah,
There was one that opened up in
Google
Irvine.
released the Willow, right? Which is basically supposedly now this was a while back, and I'm sure there's a lot more from since when but they were saying that the most powerful supercomputers would take 3 years or something like that, and then this basically solves the same problem in like 3 minutes. And it's
Yeah.
it's next level, but not just like next level. It's like next game, next
No,
level.
it's an evolution. No, so there's a company that just opened up in Irvine. They just had their well, they opened up their American branch in Irvine. I think they're a Canadian company, and they do quantum chips, quantum network cards. So they do true random numbers, which of course has always been an issue with computers, right? But they have quantum network cards that talk to each other, and they just opened their Irvine campus here like a month ago, I think it is. And
Yeah.
I mean, really, at this point, the next thing that's going to hit after AI is quantum computers, which will then you could you can think through 10,000 scenarios at once,
Yep.
right? Because quantum means all possibilities.
Yep.
So then you think about, it's like, okay, I'm just gonna run it. That's why it can crack cryptography so well, is because it just does it all at one time. I don't know exactly how the superposition of data or bits works, but somehow you're able to actually have every possibility in existence.
Yep.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like I know almost nothing about this, but that never keeps me from talking. It's
Yeah, of
like,
course.
so normally things we model systems, right? And we run these complex equations on it. And apparently the way it works is it doesn't model the thing, it actually runs it like in a reality
Hmm.
itself. So and it can do it just like way faster. I mean, like thousands of magnitudes of order faster, and it's just a completely different way of thinking about things. And that's kind of crazy, you know?
Oh yeah.
Yes. So when you're talking about cracking codes, right? And this was Jason's argument. He's like, with with what we're doing with the cryptocurrency, and now you have this ultimate computing power that can basically find every possible, way to crack the code at once. How is that possible? And so again, you have a cryptocurrency that has all of the everything baked in, all of the security, and but is it really safe? I don't think so. Maybe it
Well,
is
assuming
now,
it doesn't
but not longer,
change,
not much longer.
assuming it doesn't change, it's not safe, right? So there's an assumption here that as new tools and technology comes along, someone has to keep pace with ahead of it to make sure
Yeah.
that the bad guys are maybe continually cracking code. But this is why what was it, updates to your security software were always a big deal, because they would find they'd find the loophole in it the same day. So if you weren't out there, always keeping up to date, you had a problem. Now the pace is just going to be faster. It's going to be seconds, right? They're going to be finding the problems in your security code in seconds, which means you've got to be repairing it within milliseconds.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy what it means. I mean, this is like literally, I want to wrap this back around to God. I mean, this is literally like God-like powers that has the ability to know all things based outside of time and space. And there truly at that point is nothing randomness, right? Because if you know everything, there's nothing random. Which is really a cool argument to go down, Chris, at some point. Is there anything, is randomness actually true? Is there any, because I view randomness as like, it's just too hard or we don't understand all the variables, so therefore we can't predict. But at its
Yeah.
core, is there anything actually random, you know?
So I think if you have a real scientific view of the world, you have to assume that if you knew everything about a
Yeah.
situation or a condition, you can use probability to predict it to within like 99.9999%. So in that case, is there ever truly randomness? Because again, I believe there's, if you spend enough time and effort on anything, you can find the perfect solution. The problem is, what level of understanding do you have, and will you ever get to a level where you can really build the perfect solution? It's not
Yeah.
it's not what is technically capable; it's what is realistically capable.
And
And
this is the challenge. Yeah. Yeah. In theology, we always have the back and forth. So if God knows everything, then how do we actually have free will, right? Because in a certain sense, free will indicates that there must be some kind of randomness that God doesn't know.
which
Well,
Now,
then
okay,
negates the idea.
but also I think it's directly correlated with time, right? Because if you have if I slap you and automatically I get slapped back, I'm never gonna slap you. But
Yeah.
if I slap you and I can run away and nothing happens, then and you make me mad or whatever, then I can do that. But I think that, again, who is the creator and what is the intent? I have no idea. But when I've kind of gone down that road too, it's like free will exists. And how does free will exist? Well, it exists by having the concept of time, because that is basically, and then you are testing yourself whether the things that I want to do, right? I feel like everything I do does have that whole karma thing where it comes back. It's a boomerang. It might not come directly back, but I
Yeah.
set things into motion into the universe. And if it's good, it's coming. And if it's bad, either way, it gathers steam, right? And then it hits me,
Yeah.
and whether it comes back or around. But I think time is what makes that possible. And but why would that be the case? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah. And then you get into definition of like what even is time? Because I know for us, I mean, I view time as like a river. We kind of flow down it. We're a very linear sort of process. Now, I think our perception of time can speed up and slow down, but still it moves at a constant pace. I think, right? I don't know unless
Well, but
unless
see
you get.
there, but there again, it's also interesting in a couple things, because if you have somebody in space, if we send if me and
Yeah.
you go into space and we're up 30,000 foot, and then you're down here, Chris, time moves at a different pace. I don't
Yep.
know exactly how to explain that, but
The closer you move to the speed of light, the smaller the divisible number of the equation becomes until it approaches zero. And when you hit the speed of light, the number you're dividing by is zero, which means infinity. So
Yeah.
that's the physics coming through, by the way. But the idea here was that you have an equation that shows how the time dilation, and but then why have that? There's
yeah,
got to be so this is going to go back to, if that was by design. Let's say someone created this idea that you would have time dilation. What is the purpose of that design? Right? I'm not saying I'm not saying I'm ever going to be able to comprehend it, but then you have to have a belief that there is a reason why time dilation occurs when you approach the speed of light and all. And I'm like, wow, that's where things start to fall apart for me. Is like, why make the world so complex that it's as complex as
you
it
know
is?
what what I've found, I'm 49 now, right? And I was raised in a Protestant Baptist church, and my best friend was Catholic, and then I've had a number of different mentors that have been Jewish, that have been Muslim, and I've gone down the road of Taoism, of Buddhism, and I've read the Quran, the Bible, the Book of Mormon. Had a partner that was Mormon, and so we've always talked about these kinds of, we've had these kind of conversations. But everything that I've learned up until this point today, when I'm talking to you, what I believe is that there is a creator. I think there has to be a designer. If you see anything that is majestic, or if you create something, it takes time and effort to design. So to me, I do believe there is a designer, and I think that before I came into this space, this world, this consciousness, that me and my creator had made a pact. And he basically said, what do you want to get out of this experience? And whatever that deal was made, and then he said, okay, but you understand, if you want that you're going to have to go through these things. And I believe I said, you know what? Sign me up, because that's what I want. And then he said, okay, and there I go. And, the doctor caught me. And then I feel like the trials and the tribulations that I've been through have happened because it has broadened my perspective and my understanding and my discernment. And I believe that we are supposed to be here for the purpose of experience. I think it all comes down to experience and how we can have experience, and that somehow our creator is living vicariously through us. And I feel like when we say the word God, that it's highly charged, because depending on who you are talking to, it carries a different weight in their mentality. And so you can kind of sometimes, uh, lead the conversation down the wrong road. But I think all of the intellectualism aside, and I believe that from my heart, where I experience, the connection here, that we're supposed to have an experience, and us talking to each other, and we're learning, and intellectualism is a way of experiencing a particular experience, but so is going and jumping in a cold river, right?
Oh yeah.
There's nothing that is adding, or anything that you have to use your intellect for that. Go jump in a cold river and you will have an experience, right? So I feel like our goal, our focus, and our purpose is to achieve experience. And now it's not a fully, um, my argument isn't all the way argued in my head, but that's how I feel right now.
Well, I know one thing. Chris loves going in circles. So we, Chris loves driving in circles, right? So we can go in circles all day if you want.
What circles are we talking about?
Well, any circles. We just what we're doing right now. We're driving around in circles, you know. Um,
Yeah.
but it's
Well,
awesome, you know. So one of my favorite. Well, I have several favorite Bible verses, are Bible stories actually. But one of my favorite ones. Are you aware of the story of Job by any chance, Scotty? Job
Yeah, I think that's who I'm most related to.
is Job. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you know the story, but it's kind of a weird one. It's an off. So basically, the devil came to God, and the devil said, no, no, sorry. God was bragging about Job. Like, that's my servant. He's so good. And the devil's like, hey, man, the only reason, and this is highly paraphrased, right? So take this with a huge rock of salt, what I'm about to say. And the devil's like, well, God, yeah, yeah, yeah. The only reason he's loyal to you and faithful is just look at all the stuff you gave him. He's like a rich man. He's got everything, right? So, of course, he's going to love you. It's like, let me at him a little bit. And let's see if he still loves you, after. And then God's like, okay, fine, you can take his stuff away, but you can't like touch his body. You can't harm him in any way. And so he went through this whole process, and then the devil was able to afflict him with wounds and all sorts of stuff. And he got to a really low point, even to the point where his wife said to him, great wife, by the way, Job, why don't you just curse God and die, right? And then so Job was talking to God, and God explains to him. He goes, Job, my ways are above your ways. Where were you when I knit the universe together? And so basically just told Job, just relax, dude. I got this, right? You've got to go through this experience. When he said experience, that would just tied me into that Job experience, which is that's kind of wild, you know?
yeah,
And so,
Scott, I'm going to push back on you on this. That's an argument from authority.
of course you're going to push it. Yes,
It's an
absolutely.
argument from authority.
And if you got the gold, you get to make the rules up, right? And there's nothing I can do about it.
Because he's using the Bible and the Bible has authority, or it's because he's has more experience of reading the Bible, or where's the authority with
The,
that?
No,
the authority
God.
is that I know
God,
more than
okay.
you. I know more than you.
I
Just trust
see.
me.
So God's
Right?
argument with Job is from authority.
This
I
is
see.
what experts do, politicians do. I mean, and it sometimes it's a valid thing. It's like there's no way everyone can know all the details, so you have to rely on people of authority and expertise to do some things, right? But quite often, when we say it's an argument from authority, you're actually saying that the person is not properly defending themselves and instead just relying on their authority to win an argument, right? They're using an
Yeah.
argument setting. That's what you're saying. It's like,
Yeah. Then it
oh
just
no, I've got 50 years of experience in this and you've only been doing it for 49 years, so I know more than you, right? I mean, that's the kind of thing from because we often get into how to win an argument or how to defend an argument,
Yeah.
and the argument from authority is one that you hear all the time, right? Attacks on a person's character, you relying on your own authority and your own expertise, like I know more than you because I've done it longer, which
Well,
is true to a point.
and it is true. but it's also from a power perspective. I mean, so if you go to my jujitsu master, right, Alan Goes, and
By the
he
way,
tells you,
jujitsu is a common theme.
he tells you, he will own you. He knows more than you do. I don't care. So he's like authority and power over you, which is rightfully earned, right?
Yep.
So yeah, yeah. Just because you say that argument doesn't mean it's false. It just is false most of the time, right? Would you agree with that?
Argument from authority.
Yeah.
It really depends. If you're actually if you're in the right, which is how do you prove that, right? But if you're in the right, then your argument from authority actually has feet, right? It actually is something defensible. The problem
Yeah.
is usually we're criticizing it, we're saying someone's arguing authority and not backing up their argument.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Chris, except now we're talking about the creator of the cosmos. That's a different level of power, right?
Sure.
I mean,
It's an
But just saying I know more, trust me, is not what I would call a good argument.
Yeah,
It
that
may
gets
be
you in
right.
trouble though.
It may
So
not be 100% correct. But
yeah,
saying you're
yeah,
suffering and it sucks, but I know more, so trust me.
yeah,
yes.
but see, okay. Also, I was in the military, right? And you have it, situations that if you question, you could potentially die, right? Now, I had several sergeants that were complete dumbasses that were ahead of me, that were that have been in the military for 15 years and just complete bobbleheads. Like, but I had to do what they said, and it sucked. And if there was if I could argue with them, I'm sure I would win an argument, right? But at some point, you can't really argue. Or, another thing is if somebody's walking past this set of leaves, right? And they've seen that there is a trap underneath, and then somebody else like, I can, no, don't do that. I've been there. If you do that, you're gonna get your ass like stuck, or and well, and you can argue, and but at what point? I guess maybe the question is, when should you argue, and when should you just do what,
So I'm
if somebody says that they have the authority, because also people will set you up for failure that way too. So I don't know. That's
well
another.
the way you're talking makes me think of parenting, right?
Yes.
So at some point, you're the parent. You lay down the law. You lay down the rule. You explain how things are going to be because the child does not have the tools yet to be able to make decisions and or the knowledge yet to be able to make informed decisions. And so at some point, it is I am the authority here, and
Yes.
and you actually are. You're the one who knows more. And you've got a goal of keeping the child safe and the like. But at some point, and children push the limits. They ask questions. They do all that sort of thing. At some point, they begin to develop those skills. And then, as they're teething on those skills, they push and they prod and they become annoying to their parents. And then it becomes important for the parent to switch from just authority mode to being more explanatory. And so
Mhm.
some of the best things I hear is when a parent is explaining something to a 3 or 4 or 5 year old kid, you know, and the kid doesn't really understand the logic. But by giving them the logic, it shows there is something more to it than just I told you so,
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
right? And so I think a lot of it is even if the other side can't comprehend the why, there is a way of explaining yourself that carries more weight. So it starts with authority, but yet you still need to be able to back it up. And then at some point, you're the student may become better than the master at whatever it is that they're understanding.
Yes.
Now that's
Yes.
another thing, right? Quite often the master can't handle that. You know, your teachers don't like being questioned. You got students who know more than the teachers, and the teachers don't like that, right? And it's a mark of someone who's very self-aware of their own limitations, who can accept the fact that they may have a kid who just knows more than them.
My daughter, I would get on her ass, and she would come back with the quickest retort, and I would be like, you have a point. God bless America. Like, okay, let me think about this, But for her, it's just a response, like, bam, and then really had to, and then I had to sit back, and then because of course I'm trying to be fair, and she has a point, and again, so she's 26 now, and she's as smart as a whip, and it is interesting. it does challenge you and it humbles you as a father.
Well,
Having
one of the things I think is really interesting is like what you just said. You're arguing, and in the mid argument, something clicks in your mind, and you're like, you just stop arguing. It's like, oh, that's it, right? I used to get very frustrated when that would happen, and I'd want to continue arguing. And in some bad cases, I probably did, and ended up looking like an idiot. But at the end of the day, what I find is I now love those experiences. I love coming to a point where I'm thinking of something and I'm arguing something, and I'll be arguing with Scott or something, and he'll say something, and go, oh yeah, yeah, okay, sure, yeah, it'll be a sudden change, and I actually like those little mini epiphanies that occur that either, especially when it's something that I didn't even think of. And this happens once in a while. You didn't even think about it from that perspective. Or that was a piece of information that you just ignored, and suddenly they're calling it out and going, yeah, that's relevant. That's important. So I love when my mind has to stop mid-gear and shift gears in the middle of the conversation. I think it's cool.
Yeah,
That's very
humble
cool.
pie. Humble pie is a very interesting thing. I think most people, I see that as humility. I see that because I think that a lot of times our ego drives our actions, and because we want to be right, because we're the dad, or because we know better than you. And but when you have that, sometimes you miss out on, again, that true experience. And so if if you can be humble and just understand that you don't know everything, and live your life like an open book and I like a sponge, I do think that you will increase your discernment and therefore increase your experience. And you know, I don't know if I'd say be happier, but I do believe that you will evolve.
Yeah. There's just a time when you got to submit to the master. There's a time, I know in jujitsu, there's a story. There was a black belt in jujitsu, and there was a new guy came in, and the black belt was like 50 years old, and the new guy, he was an athlete. He was an athlete in his own right, very strong, like 26 years old actually. And I think he got into a pissing match with the black belt, and I'm like, dude, are you free? And he got hurt, right? And I go, dude, are you stupid? I mean, that's like trying to fight a lion. I mean, what is, like, what? Where in your head? Like, and he wasn't thinking. The ego just got. The ego just took over. He didn't. He stopped thinking. And he just didn't. He didn't respect the level of power that he was going up against, and then he got bit, which happens to us all, right?
Mm-hmm. Hey,
That
just a little bookkeeping real quick. Scotty, is Scott coming in blurry to you?
Yes.
Okay. So to me as well. So Scott, I think you're maybe the upload's having a bit of an issue
Yeah,
there.
possibly too. Yeah, hopefully the final recording I'll be clear, because I see right now on my screen I see 72% uploading, so I'm probably
Oh, that's
lagging.
probably what it is. Yeah, yeah. Because okay, that
Because
makes
I'm on a
sense.
backup like network. My main one is
Yeah, we
down.
had
So
technical issues. He had well, we both had different technical issues this morning.
Oh,
Um,
oh
but
yes.
so one thing you were saying, Scotty, though, was like, so I kind of think when it comes to this is you need to have confidence and belief in yourself and your capabilities to a great extent. But you also need to have self-awareness to understand that you might be wrong, that there might be limitations to what you can do. And it's a balance. It's because like some people are overly cocky and they will crumble when things fall apart. Other
yeah.
people are overly careful and won't and so it's really a balance of confidence and humility mixed. And you think about that because they don't fit, they kind of go against each other
Oh,
as far as
So,
absolutely.
beliefs.
have you guys heard of Krishnamurti? You know who that guy is?
No.
He says he's not a guru, but he was a. It was like probably the 70s where he somebody had recorded all these things, and it would be in India, and he'd have a whole group of people, and he would just sit in front of everybody and talk to them, and he would refer to himself as the speaker. He wouldn't say, he said the speaker is this, the speaker is that, and he would say, don't listen to the guru. You don't have a guru. You have to, and his whole point was think through things, don't come to conclusions. But one of the things that he said that has always stuck with me, he says thought equals conflict. And when you think about that and you sit with that for a little bit, you notice so many, or at least for me, I notice so many different things, because the very essence of thought comes from your experience, your memory, and inherently it's limited because it's only you. So you only have your own experience. You don't have my experience. You don't have Scott's experience. Scott doesn't have mine, and he doesn't have yours, and all of that all the way around. So inherently it's limited. And because it's limited, you only have a small perspective of a large problem. And so when I see people that are so egotistical and they think they know so much, like I even told me and Jason got into a big argument, and I'm like, Jason, you're the smartest motherfucker I know, but you still don't know shit. And that goes for everyone. That I
Yeah.
believe that if you are walking around, you can be an intellectual dynamo, but you still don't know shit because all you have is your own experience and thought. And in that thought is limited because that is the nature of our experiences. It's only from one person. So anyway, just something to chew on. Thought equals conflict.
We often talk about mindset or particularly experiences and how they filter how you see the world, right? So you and I can see the same facts or things around us, and how we interpret that is going to be based upon our experiences. It's going to be based upon our training, our education, our knowledge, all of that. And so you could see something, and also your bias and opinion, right? You could see something and think, oh, that's perfectly normal, and I could look at it and go, that is the worst thing I've ever seen. You could see a kid mouthing off to his parent and the dad giving him a little slap to shut him up, and I could see, my gosh, child abuse, right? I mean, really, it really depends on what filter you're looking at the world through. Scott and I get into these arguments all the time, and we realize it's because quite often we believe the same thing, but we're not arguing the same thing.
Right.
And so what'll happen is he wants to define everything in the argument so we can progress through to an endpoint. I don't care about the endpoint. My whole thing is the process of arguing and thinking through it. And so we have different goals in mind. And so we're not, even though we'll both believe the same things, and if we were to come to agreement, we'd probably end up in the same place. We end up arguing for an hour.
No, that's exactly right. That's why I'm like, Chris likes to drive in circles. I'm like, listen, let's decide where we're going to go. Let's just go there, and then let's go get some food, right? Let's not just drive around in circles for the joy of driving.
The quote you just said, think through things, don't come to conclusions. That is my approach to a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I hold off on the decision until I've thought through 15 different scenarios of how to think about it, and then I'll pick what I consider the most probable or likely, or maybe just the one I like best, of those different ways of thinking, and then I'll come to a conclusion based upon that. And the conclusion may be the same conclusion Scott comes to, but he wants to define the thinking first. And I'm like, no, I don't want to define the thinking yet.
Have you guys heard the book Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I read that, actually, yeah.
It took me a long time to get into it, but once I got into it, it was deep.
That's pretty good.
It is dense, but what a power punch that it has. Whoever, I don't remember the guy's name that wrote it, but I've listened to it a few times because I think it's that good. But a lot of what he talks about, is getting stuck, right? And then nobody likes to get stuck. But when you're stuck, arguably, you have the highest level of presence, alertness, mental faculties, because in order for you to get unstuck, you have to raise the level of awareness. You have to increase who you are and what you're doing.
Yep.
Right? And so once you figure the problem out, well, now you can come back down to where it was. But in the midst of being stuck, you have to bring everything in. And so I think that when you can keep that perspective on whatever it is that whether it's an argument or whether it's cleaning the yard or whether it is working on the motorcycle, if you can remind yourself that it is the process, because when you're thinking about, and again, not flying the way that you argue, if that is how you do it, but if you think about the end point, you need that because it's a guiding post. But if you become too rigid on that guiding post, it could potentially damage or mitigate the level of experience that you can achieve because of the presence of mind. Because if I'm thinking in the future, I'm not thinking in right now. And so again, it's an interplay with the two. I'm not saying one's right and one's wrong. I'm saying that it is what it is. When I can be here totally focused on the conversation is one thing that if I used to be an insurance salesman a long time ago, and the first thing you have to do is you have to go market. You go to networking meetings. You have to give your business card out. And I would go to these meetings, and I had a business card, and I had a line of bullshit. I knew that if I said this, as I gave them my card, that they would say that, which would allow me to say this, which would then they would say that, and then boom, I could get them in an appointment. So I was always an ulterior motive, and I just felt like like it was wrong, because there was an ulterior motive. But now I've kind of seen that, and it made me feel icky. So now I take it and I make it a point that I do not have an agenda. If I have an agenda, I'm gonna say it, and if not, I'm just gonna be present and try to actually find out what it is that you have to say, what it is that you're doing, and really be 100% involved. And that is better for me personally. It's better for, I think, everybody. If you're doing that for me, it's better for me, better for you. And then the end result ends up being better too. So,
You
for
know,
whatever that's worth.
yes. If you go in with an agenda, it's going to be clear to the person that you're talking to that you've got an agenda at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
but
then
I think it's okay to have an agenda. It's just what is the agenda,
Well,
right?
if you're clear on what that's your agenda, that's a different thing, right? If you talk to a car salesman, you know what the car salesman's trying to do. So when they
Yeah.
say stuff that that doesn't fit in with the sales pitch that's going to work on you, you still understand why they're saying what they're saying, right?
Yeah.
So when the car salesman says to me, goes, "What are you willing to pay per month to buy this car?" And I'm like, "No, nothing. I'll buy it outright. I'm not going to pay per month on a car, right?
Yeah.
That's not the way I shop." But it doesn't offend me that he asked that because that's what works for most of the people that he's talking to,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Now, if I don't know that you're trying to sell me something and you're trying to sell me something, that's different. But no, but you're talking about like being kind of open and present. And I was telling Scott yesterday that I talked to this guy who does gold. He sells gold, right? Because I wanted to learn a little bit more about how to invest in gold beyond just actually physically buying gold and having it, which obviously has its own challenges but benefits as well. And he showed me this cool little product that he and his team created. It's a travel pack, and it's like a little bag for your toiletries, but it's got gold and silver in there, and it's under the $10,000 limit, which is the limit you can travel with. But it's emergency gold and emergency silver, and it's got some other things in there and the like. But every member of his family carries one of these when they travel. So if something happens to them and they need resources, they've got gold and silver available, and they come in the little 1 gram or whatever sizes and I'm like, that's such a niche product. But I was thinking, who that would really work for is people who travel a lot internationally, or people who have multiple passports, who want, because I think when you hit a certain wealth range, you want to have a presence in multiple countries. And it occurred to me, there's a YouTube guy I watch who helps people get multiple passports and multiple citizenships. And I said, you need to reach out to this guy, because I think that's your market right there. That is the audience that would sell. And he's like, he took a note right away, and he's going to call the guy and connect. And I'm like, to me, that's fun to be able to connect this thing to that thing. This thing in my mind over here to that thing in my mind over there. And if someone else benefits from it, great.
Yeah, usually I find the best networkers are the connectors. It's like, and typically what you start doing is you'll start going to them for anything. Oh, I need this, or I need that, or I'm looking for this. And they'll be like, yeah, I know this guy who knows a guy who knows a guy. And invariably, it's crazy because their network is so huge, right? I mean, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. What I like the whole point of, if you know what the person's agenda is, I think it is okay to have an agenda, like you say, Scott. I do think that they should be clear. There are a lot of couple come to mind companies that have an agenda, but they're very deceptive on the way that they portray
Yeah,
themselves.
that's gross. It doesn't feel good, right?
Yeah, like I'm a financial advisor, and then, but really, I'm trying to get you to be, I'm trying to recruit you. There's
Yeah,
some
right.
companies like
Oh, some
that.
of the MLM type things.
Oh yeah,
Oh my God,
it
I
used to drive me
don't like
crazy
that.
because I was
Yeah,
an actual financial advisor. I had assets under management. I had, every single license that you can imagine, brokerage accounts, like everything. And there's companies that teach one concept. You say this, and now you're a financial advisor, and you're a financial advisor, but really what your goal is to get in, infiltrate them and infiltrate their market so that you
yeah,
can call their market, then try to get them to be insurance licensed, and by the time they get their insurance license, you've already worked all of their people, so now they have to find somebody and do the same thing and rinse and repeat, and then find another sucker, and that's how. And again, I've
Well,
just,
see, my mom sold Amway years ago, right?
yeah, I've been part of Amway.
Back when I was a teenager, and I did all the ordering of products and stuff for her, so I ran her warehouse. But I was like, the amount of warehouse stuff that we sell was not that high. The way she built her organization was to recruit people, and I'm like,
yeah.
that doesn't seem like a sustainable way to build an organization. If everyone works for the company and no one's buying the product, then what's going on? And I know Amway won the pyramid lawsuit against them in the 70s, so they proved that technically they were a business you can make money off of. But that's not the business model that a lot of these things were, right? I mean, like a Tupperware lady, an Avon lady, those are people who you had one representative who was selling a product. That at least I understood as a business model. But if your business model is sign up people to into your organization, that's a pyramid scheme.
Yeah,
So
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you make money off of them buying the product to sell to other people.
yeah,
Um,
it,
I
yeah.
gotta, I have to sign off. There's a guy. I'm doing a pool party at my house on June
I was going to
7th.
ask you about that. You say you're doing a pool party. Is
I
this
was
the
supposed to
video?
meet him before here, but now I'm meeting him after. But he's on his way over here right now. So yeah, there's gonna be several car clubs. There's gonna be entertainment. He's got booths that are gonna be out there. Because I'm on 2 acres out. It's a big property, and then uh, we're gonna have a DJ. It's gonna be crazy, and there's gonna be a bikini contest. Like my butt's puckered right now. I won't lie, but it should be interesting. Hopefully, it's all gonna go good. But this is like, let's do it. These are the situations that I put my dumb ass into.
That's funny.
But we'll see.
Well, that's the. I mean, saying yes to things, right? Scott and I are trying
Yeah,
to learn to say yes and instead of yes but.
Yeah,
I like it.
yes,
I like it.
Yes and.
My
yes.
my dog's barking right now, so if you don't mind, I'm gonna
Alrighty.
sign
Thanks,
off.
Scotty.
But hey,
All right,
thank you
Scotty.
very
Thank you.
much. Yeah, Scott, it was real nice to meet you. And then if you want to collaborate on something, and then see what we've done so far with our client, and if you want to piggyback or do something, by all means, give me a
Maybe
call and we'll talk about it.
that'd be pretty cool. Yeah, let me do a little bit of work on it, but I'll maybe like in a month when I actually know something because I don't know anything. Then we can actually have then I have something to talk about. So
All
that'd
good,
be
man.
cool.
If you just want some what we've done too, I mean, however you do it, I'm here. Whether it's tomorrow, next week, next month, all good. It was real nice to meet you. And again, thanks a lot, Chris. And I'll talk to you guys
Awesome.
later. All
All
Talk to you
right.
right.
later.
Enjoy.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, so what occurs to me, Scott, is I think where we get bogged down in our arguments is you're after the what and I'm after the how. I wonder if I can simplify it to that level. So I'm stuck on the thinking process, the how, the different approaches, like let's think it through 15 different ways. And your thought is more like what is the we need an end product solution. So you're like the what are we making, and I'm looking how are we making it.
Yeah. Well, I think both are valuable. It just depends. Like sometimes you're a screwdriver, sometimes you need a screwdriver, and sometimes you need a crescent wrench. I mean, and I think the wisdom comes into saying what's the right tool for
Well, if
The
I know I'm
job.
building something, if I know I'm building a car, then I know I'm going to need these sets of tools, right?
Yeah,
But if
right.
I don't know I'm building a car, and I'm not even convinced that I'm building a vehicle, then maybe I'm gonna like, well, so what are the tools available to me? And I might be going off of, oh, well, we've got, matter transportation. Why don't we think about, transporters like in Star Trek or something like that? I mean, I guess what it comes down to is I like to get into a lot of theoreticals.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's cool, and it works sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes you can just go in circles, and you're like, really, let's just go over there. I'm hungry. Let's just go get some food, right? We don't need to talk about how to make the food and how to design the barbecue. And it's like, dude, listen, just let's get some food now.
Well, but I could easily make the argument. When you get groups of people who argue over, where are we going to eat? I don't know where we're going to go. I don't know where we're going to, and it's like, well, what options do we have for how to get the food? We can call an order. We can get in the car and drive. We can. If suddenly you're stuck at home without a car, that limits what you can get, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
so basically, the how actually then is a tool to be used to help constrain the goals.
So
And,
normally in food, like in our household, I'm like, I freaking don't care. Just Shelly, just get some food. Where do you want? What do you want? Like, I don't want 10 options. What? I don't care. Just I need some food, right? Just give me
Mhm.
some food. That's all I care
Well,
about.
the idea is the goal can constrain the options, but the options can help constrain the goal if you aren't clear on the goal.
Yeah, because I'm hungry right
Mhm.
now.
Mhm.
So the hungrier I get, the less I care what kind of food, right?
But I'm just thinking, like in a business, they say we need you to build X. Okay,
Yeah.
great, great. Is there anything else I need to know? Well, where you only have $500 to do it with, and you
Yeah.
only have half of an engineer's time. Well, suddenly all the how just got really different, it got limited, which means the end product X now starts to get limited too.
Yeah. So
Maybe we
that
need to
is
iterate. We start with
that's
a theoretical proposed goal, and then we go back to the how and start to constrain the how, and then we need to go back and reword the goal based upon the how.
yeah, and that's fine in certain cases, but it's not the highest level of leadership. Because the highest level of leadership, you come back and said, I solved your problem. This is what it's going to take to make this, right?
Okay, I'm getting a little confused.
So let's say, um,
Okay, yeah, I have two problems with what you just said. So go ahead.
okay, so an example, you said you wanted to go here, right? So a lot of those constraints, I should just know you and understand a little bit. So I kind of know some of your probable constraints, right? Or I'm going to start asking those up front. So what kind of budget are we talking about, right? Because we can go there. Do we need to or would we take the old Ford pickup out in the back, or are we going to go in a limousine, right? Because it's going to be more expensive, one thing. And you should probably be able to make certain kinds of assumptions if you know the person that you're solving this problem for. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I don't understand. You use the word leadership, and that word's throwing me.
Yeah, okay, that's a good point. So then that's where the leadership comes back, is that now you go back and sell your solution back to them. Instead of being reactive to say, tell me your constraints, you just tell me what you want me to do, and then here's a solution that's going to solve that problem for you.
So to me, leadership is the one who has a clear goal vision in mind. That's the leader is the one who figures out the goal, right, and then creates the environment by which whomever's doing the work can figure it out. And some of that
Well,
is like they know the situation, like you said, they know the person, they know the constraints, they know whatever. That is, I don't consider that necessarily leadership. The leader is the person who sets the direction. The people who make it happen, they have leadership qualities but I don't think that they're leaders in themselves. To me, the leadership comes from the original goal setting.
Well, see, I don't agree with that, right? Because I think there's definitely a case where there's shared leadership in that case. So you've got to come back and sell this particular solution, and that's a form of leadership. saying, yeah, I know you only want to spend $500, but listen, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? And they could say, oh, wow, I know I want to go there, but I didn't really think about things, but I'm glad you thought about them. So now I see that, okay, this is $3,000 versus 500. Okay, fine. Let's do the $3,000 thing. In that scenario, that would be a leadership sort of thing, because you're actually giving them a better solution that they haven't fully thought through.
Yeah, I don't consider that leadership. I consider that a well-functioning organization.
Okay, whatever you want
I,
to call it. I just call that. I
well,
call that.
well, 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 to me, leadership is a very specific skill set that involves taking resources and aligning them towards to complete a goal. And usually that means hiring the right people, trusting in them, making sure they have the information they need, giving them any decisions or answers they need to be able to do the work, and trusting them to do the work and getting out of their way. And those are
Well,
all
yeah,
things to me that are qualities of leadership. Whereas, the person who comes up with a solution may or may not have leadership skills.
so let me give you my definition of leadership, because clearly we got an equivocation problem happening. My definition of leadership, and there's certainly levels of leadership,
Sure.
something
Yeah.
beyond something beyond, hey boss, tell me what to do and tell me every single variable that I need to consider, right? Anything above that is some form of leadership in my
Oh,
mind.
yeah, that to me doesn't fly as a definition. No,
Okay,
that to
yeah,
me
that's
is
how I
just
define it.
that's independence, that's authority, that's responsibility, that's engagement. All those other kind of buzzwords we use to describe workers and what they're able to do. I think I think the biggest problem with government workers in what you get is they're not able to be engaged. They're not engaged because the way the government's structured, they're not able to be engaged. And then they're living in a culture with no engagement, and therefore they learn to not care.
Well, we
And
didn't
I
talk about
think
anything about government. That's
no, no, no,
you.
but what I'm getting at is like because I'm thinking of like Elon Musk saying care was it caring and competencies, what he keeps talking about, and I think that's all leadership. If you
Well,
having
that's a form of leadership.
a caring and competent workforce is on having leadership allowing for caring and competency to exist.
Yeah, that's a
If you
form
don't,
of leadership.
this is the what I've come down to is it's all top down. No culture is really created only by the bottom up. It's all top down.
Well,
And
see, you don't.
if the top doesn't live the values and principles that the organization is supposed to espouse, the organization won't have those core principles and values.
Yeah, but hopefully you don't want it all top down, because then all you have is command and control, right? And then you limit your capabilities.
And I'm not talking about authoritarian top down. I'm just talking about the value structure, setting the tone, building the culture, trusting your people, giving them authority and autonomy, not getting in their way, empowering them. All of those aspects, to me, they can't happen from the bottom up. They have to happen from the top down. Because if your boss is nitpicking and everything you do, then the company can say we have an empowerment culture. We allow people to engage and do their work. But if your boss is sitting there looking over your shoulder the entire time, that's not true.
Yeah, that's no fun. Yeah, nobody wants that or whatever. But I think we're arguing about stuff that is like, I don't want to argue about, because
Also,
now we're
yeah,
talking about the pure definition.
because
It's like,
leadership to me is a very specific thing that I think that anyone can show leadership in any level. But I do
yes.
think that leadership is providing something to others. To me, it's about providing something to others.
Well, it depends on how you define it, because
Well,
everybody defines it
it's
differently,
serving
right?
others. It's serving others. At the end of the day, it's serving others.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, typically at the highest form of leadership, people will set a strategic vision. Like, this is what I see. Like Martin Luther King, I see this, right? That is the highest form of leadership. Now, how
And
you
then
get
they allow,
it
and
done,
then they allow it to happen. That's the other
then you
thing,
allow
right?
it to
Coming
happen.
up with a
Yes.
vision, but not allowing it to happen. I mean, this I think is actually a problem that Trump suffers from is he's not clear on his vision, first of all, and the things that he has a vision on, he has a very set way of how he thinks it should roll out.
Yeah, well, I mean,
And
Trump.
I think he gets in the way of letting things roll out because he has a very strong opinion of how things should roll out.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So he's prioritizing. I mean, he definitely wants strong people in that organization, but he wants strong people that he can 100% control.
Well, I think the tariffs are a good example. My understanding is when they first did an examination of the tariffs and his team proposed something to do with the tariffs and how to treat the different countries, it was a complex idea because basically tariffs are complex. Every country, every industry, every product has different tariffs. And so that would have been a very complex thing to understand. And he doesn't like complexity, especially when he's trying to sell it to the masses. So he overrode all of their logical work with constraints saying, no, it's going to be simple. And he made it a simple thing, which of course then has a different impacts on what happened. I think he actually made it harder for tariffs to roll out because he had an idea of what it should be like. And that is not in reality the way things are.
So this is the way I think about that, right? This had nothing to do with tariffs. Tariffs was just a technique in order to get leverage so we can negotiate, right? It's just a form of leverage over somebody else.
It's a simplistic view of leverage, yes.
Yeah, and I will tell you, sometimes simple things like that really work. Really,
it's not a simple thing, but that's the problem. He examines it like it's a simple thing. It is not a simple thing. It's a simplistic view of a complex thing. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, but it may be good enough to fix the problem, right? Because in my mind, you want a solution that's
depends on what problem you're fixing. I don't think it's good enough for the problem he says it's supposed to fix. But okay,
well, that we don't know. We're gonna have to wait and see how it pans out, right? We don't know for sure.
You say we're going to wait and see that, but I can still have an opinion. I don't think it is going to pan out the way he says it's going to pan out because I think the complexity is being missed in this. Right?
Yeah, and I think sometimes
I think if he'd start off and just said 10% across the board, let's make it simple. If he just said tariffs are complex, we're going to make this simple, 10% across the board, and then we'll start negotiating. That I think would have been something the world could have accepted. But this weird calculation based upon nothing really, I mean, but a surplus number that may or may not be accurate for all I know, that caused all kinds of issues.
Yeah, and I don't think he cares about that because he's looking for another objective.
He doesn't. And but that's the point: is he doesn't care. Why doesn't he care? I think he doesn't care because he doesn't understand. If he understood, he'd care.
Possibly. And it may not be important. It may not be important, actually, because the tariffs are not going to stay. All it is I just want to get leverage over you so I can get you to the negotiation table, right? That's all I'm trying to do.
So, yes, okay, get you to the negotiation table. Is that the only downstream effect of what's happened with the tariffs?
I don't think he's too worried about breaking some eggs along the way, right?
What do you mean by breaking eggs?
Well, by pissing people off, upsetting people, like,
by having other countries who buy American debt sell off their debt, and therefore having the cost of credit in the United States go up, so that the next company that wants to start now has to spend more money because there's not as much dollars in the U.S. economy anymore.
He views that as temporary pain because when I win this other big objective, all that's going to be irrelevant compared to when I win the big prize. That's the way he's thinking.
If we were the only game in town, I would agree. And just because we're the biggest game in town doesn't mean we're the only game in town.
Now, you got to make sure that you understand, I'm not arguing for his approach. I'm just trying, I think I understand his approach. I'm not saying it's an optimal approach. I'm just saying that's how he's thinking.
And what I'm saying is I think it's a simplistic approach because I think he has a simplistic understanding of how these things fit together.
Sometimes simple gets done, man. Sometimes you can overcomplicate things, right? And I do understand that in order to solve a problem, because we focus on this, we bias towards thinking. His bias is let's just take action, right?
So we've talked about this. Simplification abstracts the complexities out of a situation, and those complexities can actually have drastic impact.
Drastic impacts, yes, exactly. That's right.
Right. And so to not consider them, it's one thing to say I understand them, but I'm still making this decision. It's another thing to say I don't care about them, but I'm still making this decision.
Yes, right,
To
right.
me, again, it's the risk assessment. If you assess a risk and agree to it and then move forward with that risk, that's different than ignoring the risk.
Yeah, but that's how he rolls. That's Trump, man. He's a brawler. He's a chainsaw. He's a wrecking ball, right?
Yeah,
He's not a
I get
surgeon with
that.
a scalpel, right? That's not him.
And I get that and I understand that. But what I'm saying is, I think that what we've got here is we've got an oversimplification of an issue here.
Very, very possibly, yes. And maybe, I don't know for sure, right? Very likely you're right. It depends on what the outcome is. Depends if he gets what he wants or not.
Well, no matter what he gets, he's going to say it's what he wants because they're going to spin it no matter what.
Yeah,
He
probably.
could he could get 5% of what he wants and they'll spin it as a win. I mean that's just the way politics
Yeah,
works.
no doubt. That's
So
everybody does that. Yeah.
right. So he's won no matter what. The question is whether or not the country will agree based upon the economics of what's going on in the world around
Well,
us.
when you say the country, I mean the country is comprised of a bunch of people. So some part of the country is going to agree, and some are not going to agree. You know.
The country will agree by how they vote, how their dollars are impacted, and then how they vote after that. That's how you're going to find out if the country agrees or disagrees with that he won.
Well, we'll never know that because he's not going to run again. Well, he may want to run again, but
I
I
don't
don't
know. The
see.
Trump 2028 hats are out now.
I don't see a pathway to that. But who knows? You know, maybe he'll figure something out.
Well, I mean, if you can actually get a constitutional amendment, then you could do it. But that
It
path
takes like a
seems pretty.
two-thirds vote of Congress. That ain't going to happen,
That takes a
right?
2/3 votes of the states
Of the
on
states,
top of
okay.
the no Congress as well, but it's states especially. All state 2/3 of the state governments have to agree to make an amendment. That's why we don't have amendments.
Yeah, because they're so hard to get agreement on, right?
Yeah. So
So
the likelihood of that happening through that path is very low.
yeah. So the states would be the Senate then, right? Because you get two representatives from each
No,
state.
the state governments have to say yes to it.
Oh, the state governments.
The federal
Interesting.
government is not the only person who has to approve an amendment. The state
Hmm.
governments have to approve the amendment.
I mean, we've got quite a few of them, so I mean, who knows? I mean, I doubt if
Yeah,
he's going
but
to
the
get
last
that.
one was in the 60s, wasn't it? I mean,
Oh, I don't know. I don't know.
considering how far apart left and right are right now, no blue states are going to vote for something that's going to help the Republicans, and no red states going to vote for something that helps the Democrats.
I don't know. I'm going to research it right now. Let's see. 1992, the 27th Amendment,
Which one was that one?
May 7th.
Which one is the
Let's see.
27th Amendment?
Is this a constitutional amendment or what amendment is this? The 27th Amendment prevents Congress from granting themselves a pay raise during their current term.
Oh yes, that one. Oh, okay, the pay raise one. Yes.
And then
I
there's
think
also
I think we need to get them to give up their investments while they're in office. Personally, blind trust.
no, it's interesting. And then it says the 28th Amendment ratified on the 27 January 27, 2020. That may
Is
that
that
may
the
not be that may be a state amendment. We're talking about the amendment to the United States Constitution.
yeah?
Yeah, so not that far ago. So who knows, Chris? I don't know.
Well, but you think about '92. You think about where campaign finance reform was back in the '90s and the like, and there was a lot more being open to it. But the PACs got power, and the money started to flow into politics, and at that point, I don't think at this point, they generate their power and their wealth through keeping the system going the way it is.
Yeah, that's for sure. Actually, yeah. But I don't know. We're gonna see. I'm just so curious to see if Trump's approach is gonna work, or maybe not work, but how well it's gonna work.
There will
Right?
be short-term gains that I think
Yeah.
he'll definitely be able to point to. Right? They talk about 70 countries or whatever that have reached out to negotiate, and I
Yeah.
think that would have happened even with 10% and without threatening bigger ones. At the end of the day, threatening order change of that magnitude is gonna
China's the big
cost
one.
them.
That's the big one. China's the big one.
Yeah, and so it's a very antagonistic approach to China. I saw something interesting on a YouTube podcast today. Someone was mentioning that the press is getting very giving very positive viewpoints of China, which I haven't seen, so I don't know if that's true or not.
Interesting. I have no
It
idea.
sounded like someone who had a right-wing bias was basically saying that the standard media was kind of talking about China in a good light, probably in essence to counteract what the president's actions against China. But I hadn't
Yeah,
seen that, so I'm wondering where this person's getting this information from, because I haven't seen a
I
particular bias in media to say China's good.
I yeah, I don't know. I typically I tell you, Chris, I do not watch any more of the media. I used to watch it and be so up to date and everything, and I used to get so riled up, and I used to waste so much time actually. So
Well,
now what I'm doing,
my problem with that is you shouldn't get riled up. You should
okay,
you should be
I
asking
shouldn't
questions, not getting riled up.
I shouldn't do a lot of stuff, but I do, right? So
Yeah.
basically now I took that time where I would spend many, many hours, sometimes a day watching. So now I'm actually using it to benefit stuff. So basically these are the two things that I've swapped that time out. I stopped doing that and I started doing this as I'm learning Greek. So I spend anywhere from 7 to 10 hours a week on learning Greek, which is kind of cool. It's better than getting riled up watching stupid news stuff, actually. And this CNC machine that I got, I'm actually starting to use that thing. So I'm learning Fusion 360 in order to design like parts, and I was organizing my tooling and all that sort of stuff. So I've
Oh,
swapped that time out. I'm so much happier, Chris, now as a person.
one thing, I was talking to that gold guy, and one of the products that they came up with, if you're willing to spend $250,000, is you can create your own gold coin, and they
Oh,
will
and
mint it for you.
I'm gonna create my own coin, not gold though. I'll have an
Yeah, no,
aluminum.
but it's just it made me think of the of the CNC machines and the like. When they talked about it, I was like, if you've got millions and millions to spare, setting aside $500,000 to make your own coins, I was thinking, even if you like minted silver coins and you handed them out to like the nieces and nephews and things, I mean, it truly would be like a true luxury item.
Yeah, hang on. Let me show you something. This is what I'm working on doing. So I bought a bunch of these blanks. They're aluminum blanks, 3.5 inches by three and a half
Hmm.
inches by half an inch thick. And so I am going to mill my own coin out of this that I can give away to networking events. I haven't thought about the design or what I'm going to do, but it's like when you give that to somebody, that leaves a lasting impression. They're like, "You're different. You're not giving me the same old
Well,
whatever it is, two
so
by 3.5 inch business card."
so Chris, who was on our podcast talking about real estate investment, his
Yeah.
business card is a poker chip.
Oh, see, there you go. Something different. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a
Cool.
poker chip with a QR code and his information on it, and that's what he
Cool.
hands out, and it gets attention because it's different.
Because it's different. Because you stand out. Because the
Mhm.
last thing I want to do is I don't want to be a business card wrapped up in a rubber band, put in the drawer, right? I need
Well,
to
see,
force you to do two things, either to have me stand out or throw it away. One of the two. I'm forcing you to make a decision.
so this is the size of a normal business card, right?
A
So
two
I
by two.
actually created one of myself that was a little bit smaller.
See, there you go.
So
Something. Yes,
so
yes.
so it's a little bit smaller in size. So
Now I'd rather,
um,
Chris, you go bigger because I don't want it to fit in that stack. That will fit in the stack with a rubber band. I want you to make a
yeah, no,
big.
the problem is if I go bigger, then the likelihood is someone's. It's actually like the smaller one. There's a company called Moo that makes really half size ones that I really like.
Yeah.
I think bigger is. I would not like to get a bigger business card from someone else.
See, I
So
want to
that's my
force. See,
personal.
I want to force that decision either to have me stand separate or throw me away. One of the two. I want to force a decision. I
I'm
don't want
telling
to
you,
go in the same
I
pile.
would put it in a different pocket than the one that had the business cards, and then it would go off to the side. So
But that's okay. That's okay. That's okay. I just
so
don't want to be in the stack.
I
That's
wanted
all
to
I
go
do.
back to this idea of watching the news though, and I think I mentioned to you, um, my mind is firing all the time when I hear information come in, right? And I'm assessing when I hear information come in. I kind of make a quick judgment call as to, well, what does this information mean? Is it of
Chris,
any
can you go?
value
I'm
to
having a
me?
hard time hearing you. Can you go? Are you?
Really? I'm right
Yeah, it's
here.
way better right there. Yeah.
Okay, well, let me move here. Okay, so
There we go.
I'm always assessing information that comes in, and I'm running it through a filter in my head, saying, is this something that's useful for me to know? Is this
Yeah.
just a piece of trivia that might come up in a conversation someday? Is this something valuable? And so quite often when I'm watching a documentary or sometimes the news, that'll happen. So this week, when they were talking about the Pope dying, and they were talking about how they're going to be voting for the next Pope, and they said the cardinals are going to vote, and there's all these rules. Cardinals under the age of 80, blah, 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 all this kind of stuff. But they kept saying, and I mentioned this to you, 80% of the cardinals that will be voting were put into place by the Pope who just recently died.
Dude, you're cracking me up. I can't listen to you because all I can hear is Clement, his comment today in Toastmasters.
Yeah. But this is how my mind works. I mean, literally. So I could just have taken that piece of information that the media fed me, which was that 80% of the cardinals were put into place by the Pope who just recently passed away. Okay. Yeah. The media doesn't bother to say anything about what that means. It's just a fact. But every single report I heard said this, and they harped on it like it was an important thing.
Yeah, right.
And so I'm like, what am I supposed to take away from the fact that they mentioned this? It's like, so what? You know, if 50% of people alive today are male, 50% alive today are female. You know, I mean, what am I supposed to take away from a fact like that? A fact needs to have a context to make it worth something.
No. You gotta understand how the media works. They're very simple. It's like they get you riled up and they sell a bunch of
they're implying something by it, yes. Right? So they're implying so what am I supposed to take away is my point. And I'm thinking it's got to be something negative that they're trying to imply. There's something negative by the fact that and so then I went and I did my little research because I have to figure out, well, is this actually that odd a thing? You know, he's an 88-year-old guy. Is it odd that, you know, 80% of the people that are going to be voting were people he put into place? And it turns out, I think they were saying John Paul or whatever it was, had put 90% of the people in after him, and some of the other ones had like 67%. So it sounds like it's not uncommon for there to be 60, 70, 80, even 90% of the cardinals to have been put in place by the Pope. So it's not a big deal. And yet the way they brought it up was like, I'm supposed to somehow think it's a big deal. So this to me is the problem with media in general, is they don't have anything to say, so they say stuff in hopes that I will get riled up or upset by it. And so now what they've done is actually made me more angry at the media, which means the next time I hear something, I'm going to be even more on alert for listening to the crap that comes out of their mouths.
Here's the move, though. See, you're still getting sucked in, right? Stop watching it. That's the move. That's it.
Yeah, no, there's value in that. I get that.
And then what
was that?
Go make a flute or out of PVC or whatever you do, you know, or make a knife or something. Because I'm telling you, that stuff's not good for you. It is poison for the brain. That stuff, because it's solely designed purely to rile you up.
Which is funny because, you know, up until I would say the 70s, there was a fair amount of respect for media. And sometime in the 80s, as the fringe radio started to come out, and then eventually the internet came out as an outlet, that it became more and more that the mainstream media, and at the same time, it was all about making money. Suddenly, the news wasn't a cost center. It used to be the news cost money for a network to run. Yeah. Suddenly, they were trying to find a way to make money off the news. And I remember Dan Rather would make comments like, "I'm not going to do it with that report because that's just sensationalism."
Yeah.
He was probably the last guy who did that when it came to reporting.
These people on there, they're not news. It's opinion pieces, and they're just paid actors. Period. They're not reporters. They are paid actors. That's it. Don't watch it. That's my 2 cents. And I stopped watching. I tell you, I am so much happier, Chris. Now I can spend time with you doing a podcast instead of consuming. We can create, which is, it's always better to create than to consume.
Yes, it is. I think it's true. It's one of the things I think. I'm trying to think back to the days when we have, you know, the founding fathers or that whatever, and these people would write a lot. They would write in their diaries. They would read a fair amount, but the sheer amount of what was available to them didn't overwhelm them, right?
Yes, they were created.
Who's the guy? Scott Galloway is. He's like a professor of economics. Made a lot of money, but he's very critical of Trump, and he was critical of everyone because, you know, but he leans left. And he said, was it him or no? Maybe it was someone else that said there were, there's the two, oh no, it was Douglas Murray said this, that, we have like the two dark ages, one was there wasn't enough information for the rest of us. And now there's too much information.
Now there's too much information. Yeah. Now I did watch a little bit of news just because I was kind of fascinated about it last night, actually, but I seeked it out. Was the rocket, what was it? The Blue Origin, the thing that looked like a penis that everybody's talking about? That
Yeah, well, there have been multiple of the ones of those. Is this because of
yeah,
all the women that went up recently?
that shot the lady up into space, and they thought they were actually astronauts, and they went on an 11-minute ride. I'm like, okay, come on, that is just a bunch of that. That is the
So,
that's what our shit's degraded to. It's degraded to the point where it's complete junk, complete
well,
garbage.
yeah, you went into space, so you're an astronaut,
No, you're
and
not. Not.
that's what you. So what happened was, the bar to become an astronaut was very high for a long time. And
Yeah,
so basically, the thing that made you different was that you went into space. So we could say you went into space or you're an astronaut because
yeah,
the bar to become an astronaut was so high to begin with
yeah,
that it wasn't just, you were doing stuff in there. You were doing science experiments,
yeah. You were a
the,
worker.
the pilot of the shuttle or whatever also had to be trained on a bunch of other things.
Yeah,
The chances of an astronaut not having a doctorate degree was pretty much non-existent for
yeah,
a long
yeah,
time.
yeah.
And and then it's like now that you can be a tourist and go into space,
Yeah.
you're not an astronaut.
I
Not
think it's
at
cool.
least not the way it was in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s.
No,
This is
no.
not
It
an
was a
astronaut.
fun ride. It was cool,
Yeah.
right? How
So
fun.
you're a
But
space traveler. Okay, I'll give you that.
yes, right.
And yes, it's impressive and that's cool and all that kind of stuff, but it's not to me in the history. And it's not, I understand you wanted to get the little gimmick in there saying this is an all-female crew, but
Of
the
course. Of
crew,
course.
it wasn't a crew because they didn't do anything.
It was a photo op. Yeah, right.
A
Exactly.
crew a crew mans the vessel they're on. A
Yes, right,
ship's
right.
crew mans the vessel they're on. They were not the crew, they were passengers.
They took a fun ride, right? And they did a
Yeah.
really nice photo op at the end.
You
Great
know,
little PR piece.
I mean, if someone got on a ship with Christopher Columbus when he went to the New World, and they got there, would he say, "I'm an explorer"? No, you just rode on the ship with Christopher Columbus. I mean, what am I going to say, right?
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
like,
But that entertained me just a little bit actually. But they're getting a lot of pushback actually. So
well,
which
because they made a big deal out of it, which and I think if they marketed it correctly, they could have made a big deal out of it. They shouldn't
yeah.
have crossed over into the astronaut territory, though. I
And
think
that
I
was a
think
bad.
that's
They're
what the
like, you're
problem.
not an astronaut. Come on. Everybody
Yeah,
knows that. Right?
no,
Yeah.
I think that's where the problem was, and of course, the idea like this is a big historic moment. Why is it a big historic moment? Because a rich guy
Yeah.
sent a bunch of women into space. I
Yeah.
mean, I was joking with my wife because if Elon Musk had thought of this, maybe he would have done the exact same thing. Just we'll
Yeah.
send a bunch of women into space and say we were the first, right?
Well,
Being the first, being the first matters when being the first is a meaningful thing.
yeah. But there's been plenty of women astronauts that have gone before that are
Oh,
real
plenty of
astronauts.
women astronauts.
That
Yeah,
are the
but
real ones.
but the point of this was it was all female as opposed to
Yeah.
just
So,
women
yeah.
astronauts, right? But
So,
the point is they didn't do anything. If they actually had a task up there, but the thing
yeah.
is because it's a 15-minute ride, it's not there's no time to do anything up there.
No,
It
Chris,
really is go up there and
no, 11-minute ride. That was all you get.
so I would love to do that airplane that goes hyperbolic or whatever parabolic that you get weightlessness. I think that'd be really cool to do too, but that wouldn't make me anything. It would be an experience. They got an experience.
Well, it's
The rest
fun.
of us
It was
did.
a fun ride. That's
The
it.
world the world of science did not get much out of that in my mind.
This is the PR
Right.
stuff, right? That kind of backfired, basically, right? So, which
Yeah,
is
and again, I think if they didn't make such a big deal out of it, if it didn't get
yeah,
all the news coverage, if they didn't all have their families there, for them it's a big deal though. I mean, honestly, if I were going to space, I'd want my family there too. I think it'd be
oh
a
my
cool
God,
thing
it'd
to
be
do.
so cool. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But you're not an astronaut. Come on, come on. You know what? Which is interesting, right? Because the general stupidity of the general public does have a limit, right? Does have a limit. Like I remember listening to Howard Stern. Do you know Howard Stern? Have you listened to him way back when? He's
Yeah,
the
a long time ago. Yeah.
shock jock in New York or whatever. He made a statement. He goes, never underestimate the stupidity of your audience or something like that. Actually, because he did some really stupid stuff. I mean, he was He was like dragging down in the gutter. It's amazing how successful he
Well,
was.
so
So
an astronaut is a person trained to travel in space.
yeah,
That's literally what it is. But the reason why I think it triggers though is that it's like when a security guard says they're in law enforcement,
yeah, right.
right? I get there's a little bit of overlap, but it's not law enforcement. It's not really law enforcement, right? The way it is.
No. But that's
And
even much better than they did because they're not even close. At least the security guy kind of drives around, call, hey, I see a funny guy. I call in.
he is law enforcement adjacent, right? So,
Yeah, yeah. Security
but
sees and reports. That's their job. They don't arrest, right?
I think though, yeah, people need to be careful with backlash. You can redefine words, and but sometimes you can't.
No. There is a limit to the nonsense apparently that you can try to push on people before they say
Even
no,
calling
no,
it,
no, no, no.
even calling them a crew would be tough. All female in space. The first all female what in space?
Yeah, it's a bunch of nonsense. It's a bunch of nonsense. But that was the only story I actually seeked out in the past week or so. I thought that
But
was kind
but
of
think about
interesting.
this. If we weren't in such a kind of a DEI backlash after Trump got elected,
Yeah,
would it have come across differently?
probably it depends on the environment. Yeah, of course, right. You got to read
Right?
the tea leaves.
I think to a certain extent, there would have been an underlying viewpoint of that we're talking about. This astronaut conversation would be there, but people would be less likely to push back if
Yeah,
DEI were strong.
yeah,
And so what
yeah.
happened is the reason why it really exploded was because DEI isn't where it was 6 months ago or a year
Yeah,
ago.
right. We're
And
just
so
in a different culture.
you're getting a lot of people who would not have pushed back before pushing back.
Yeah, yeah. Because at some point people are like, come on, enough's enough. I mean, let's just stop. Let's just come back to some sort of centralness. Let's come back to some kind
No,
of normalcy, right?
you know, Jeff Bezos could have said, I think it'd be really cool if we sent all women up in space, and so we could be like the first all female group of people in space.
That's freaking
All right,
awesome. That'd have been great.
that would have been
Millions
cool.
of people would have
No,
loved it.
it's yeah, but
I mean, Katy Perry could have given a little concert after she came back. I mean, it'd been freaking cool, right? But
yeah.
come on. Anyways,
Well, not only that. So I heard them comparing it to when all the celebrities were singing "Imagine" during the pandemic. Right? It's like it's you think you're doing something cool, but it just comes across as pretentious.
it's very pretentious. It's very narcissistic, because I
Right.
really doubt that those people really care anything about the people they're trying to help. Maybe they do a little bit. They care about how they're perceived by others, is what they really care about.
Oh, well, I'll even give them the benefit of the doubt and say they all think they actually do care about. They
Not
actually do care
possibly,
about it.
yeah, yeah,
Even if you gave them the benefit of the doubt, the point is still perception, right? The
yeah,
perception is going to be, I represent these people,
yeah,
and so when I do something, it's a good thing for
yeah,
these people, and suddenly it's like, well, no, that's because there's a selfishness aspect. If anyone, if it had it been like, if it wasn't his girl, his fiance, and a pop star, and all these, the only one who deserved to be on there was the woman who used to work at NASA, I think it was.
Oh, I know the whole cry. I just saw a
Yeah,
few
well,
minutes.
one of the women used to work at NASA, and I don't remember what her job was. But I don't think it was in the actual scientist that did the spacecraft. But the point, she used to work for NASA. That to me is cool. You
Yeah,
pick 8 women who used to work for NASA, or you pick 8 people ex Air Force and all, or you pick people from other. That I would have had
yeah,
no qualms about, because
yeah,
to me that makes a lot of sense in saying, hey, we're gonna take 8 people who led meaningful lives but aren't famous.
yeah.
I I think that would have carried a lot more weight with the American people, because it's like they're special, but they're not. They're special, but they're not.
They're not astronauts, but at least they're kind of in the field, right? It's not
Well,
so contrived, right?
even if they weren't in the field, right? If they were true, you know, uh, equal rights people, I think there's a whole bunch of people that we would say are deserving of that kind of recognition in their
Yeah.
own field.
Yes.
And
Right.
you could easily go and find 8 people who aren't recognized internationally or even nationally
Oh
that
yeah.
deserve that deserve that kind of attention and say, hey, we're doing this so they get the attention they deserve.
Yeah.
Katy Perry doesn't need any more attention.
No,
You know,
she's
and I don't want to crap on her, but the idea here is all we see is a famous person getting famous perks.
yeah, of course, yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean that's how our society works. People, she's got eyeballs, so she's got power over people, right? Which I always
But
thought it's like, hey, you might be a great singer, but you're not a politician. I mean, just why don't you just sing songs and like
well,
be
that's why
quiet?
people get upset when Hollywood stars get into politics and start
I know.
giving their opinion. Right?
Yeah,
It's like I think you damage your credibility more when you start giving opinions and you think it's important because you're famous.
yeah, right.
Right?
Yeah, yeah.
I have a lot more respect for someone who says, I have my opinions, but you don't need to know them.
You don't need to know them. Look, just listen to my songs. Just buy my records. I'm a musician. That's what I do, right?
Yeah.
Buy my shit. Yeah, exactly.
But there's a point where people believe that there are causes that they need to be tied to, but they're not really bought into the cause. It's like, oh yeah, I like this idea of equality. Oh yes, I like this idea of whatever, helping the poor, and they lend a little bit of their popularity to it, but they're not really entrenched in it. They're not engaged in it to the level.
No, because it's more
So
selfish.
basically, the rest of us don't see that they're engaged, and therefore we don't believe it's true. Like if
Yeah,
you take someone who's been fighting for a cause for years, right?
yeah,
I mean, there are people who have family members that die of certain cancers, and they will fight for that cause,
yeah,
and you will
right.
see them out at events for years and years and years. I
Yeah,
have
that.
nothing. So when they do something, I'm like, yes, they're using their popularity, but I can see they believe in this, and
Yeah,
they're
no,
using
it's
their
they're
popularity
real.
for
They're
that.
authentic, right?
Right,
Yes,
that
exactly.
feels real. The problem with
Yeah,
all these other ones is they don't feel real. Even if they truly is real, I can't judge whether they truly believe in this or not. But I
yeah,
don't see that they've done the work,
yeah, yeah. It's
if
just
that makes
perception
sense.
is all that matters. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's exactly right. All right,
yeah, I
Chris,
don't know.
are we ready to wrap up? Because I'm actually ready to get some food.
Yeah. Let's see if there's anything else here. I mean, I wrote a bunch of crap down, but we didn't get to. Well, we got to God and gold, but we didn't get to guns today.
We can pick up guns next time.
God, gold, and guns. Yeah. I did have one comment. This is something I heard of. Elon Musk and Jack Dorsey, the guy who started Twitter,
Yeah.
were both saying that we should get rid of all IP law.
Oh, I don't know. That's an interesting one.
Uh-huh. And it's an interesting comment. I think because it's getting in the way of AI training or whatever, because all these copyright laws to protect people's information. And I get it, but property law is a huge part of what makes
That's a
individual rights what they are.
fundamental part.
It's
Yeah,
fundamental
exactly.
to American individuality. And so I don't know the context that they were saying this in. I think there was a tweet back and forth or something on this. Um, I'm wondering where that's going to go. So that's something that's something in the news that did catch my attention.
That's a deep, dark subject that could take years and years to sort through, actually.
Well, but if you're already at the top of your game, if you're already at the top of society, then stripping out IP law might be okay because you'll stay at the top. If you allow IP law, the next Elon Musk will come around someday and have their IP protections, and they'll be able to take over and do what he did.
Yeah, can't even think about the impact of that because the whole thing is if you do the work, right, you deserve the spoils. You deserve to get paid for that work, actually.
Yes. And so what I heard arguing for a lot of this is stylistically, right? So if I take the Disney style of drawing pictures and
Yeah.
draw my own characters in the Disney style,
Yeah.
that should be okay because it's my IP using someone else's style that they've made popular.
Yeah, you're going to get the shit suit out of you from that, I'm telling you, actually.
Not necessarily, but if I go ahead and I make my own Mickey Mouse and it looks like Mickey Mouse, that's a problem. That is outright stealing a character that you created.
So let
A
me
style.
tell you,
Go ahead.
we did that. We actually had a project for Disney way back in the old days, actually, and we couldn't get like them to draw something fast. So our artist drew a Mickey Mouse, and let me tell you something. Oh shit! did they come down hard on us?
Well, you
Actually,
shouldn't be drawing a Mickey Mouse. I'm actually not saying don't draw a Mickey Mouse. You
yeah.
can't draw the characters someone makes. That is outright IP. But when it comes to
And they
style,
made that
like
very clear.
if Monet, if someone paints in the style of Monet, are you ripping off Monet? Are you ripping
Well,
off his IP?
here's the thing, Chris, because I actually talked to a high-end IP attorney. It doesn't matter, right? Whether you're ripping off or not, they will sue the crap out of you
Okay,
anyway,
that's a
right?
different thing, right? So whether the law actually says it or not, you see how you can manipulate the legal system is a different
Yes,
conversation,
right.
right? I mean, and that's honestly how Donald Trump won a lot of his lawsuits because
Yeah.
he just sued the people until they gave up,
But that's
right?
reality. That's
So
just how it actually works,
yeah,
you know?
but I'm talking about the actual law itself. So then the question becomes theoretically, should you be able to protect a style? So like if there's a Disney style of drawing, if there's a Pixar style of making animation, if there's a Japanese animation style, if there's a music style, like what if I create a brand new music style that's some kind of a fusion of jazz, hip hop, and classical? And I
Yeah.
call it whatever I want to call it. And someone else writes music in that style. Can I sue them for IP? And that's the problem. That's the difficulty there. It's like
Well, you can
it
sue
is a
them for
kind of
anything. Will you
IP.
win, right, is the real
It's a
question.
kind of IP, but should that be protected? And I would say no. You're actually inventing a new style, and I do think there is an IP aspect to it. But there's nothing tangible that I think the tangibility of what I'm taking away from you is the tough part. Because if it's a mindset, if you come up with a brand new mindset that no one has ever had, and then I copy that mindset, can you sue me, or should you have the right to sue me for IP rights?
Well, rephrase it, right? Because of course you're going to get sued. The question is, will you win? Is the real question.
So the question is, should there be a law that says that I can't do that? Would be the question. And so the idea is, coming up with a framework, coming up with a mindset. I can't copy everything you did exactly. No,
It
that would
depends
be
on how
wrong.
close it is. This is highly subjective, right? Which is why in a court of law, you could have like the same court case, same facts, two different judges, and you'll get different outcomes, different
Yeah.
juries. So it's a touchy feely
Well,
fuzzy sort
because
of
not
thing,
only that, just because of the same facts doesn't mean they were presented in the same way.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So where I used to work, we had several companies that would apply for the same dot whatever, and so they would go into arbitration or some kind of a proceeding, and in one case it was like game and games or car and cars, right? They were saying, oh, it's too similar. They're plurals of each other,
Right.
and this happened across, and there were several dozen of these. And they didn't all come down on the same side. Some judges said you both can exist. Some judges said they both can't exist. And people were pissed off because there was no standard for it. And it was like each case was tried separately, and the lawyers made their arguments, and they came out with different outcomes.
And that happens all the time, actually. In fact, one of the questions is when you take a case is like, who's the judge? Who's the judge? Because that depends a lot on whether we're going to win or not.
Who's the judge? How good is your lawyer? I mean, let's face it, when you have a high-end lawyer or a legal team that you're spending a lot of money on, they will find things in the law that your cheap lawyer won't be able to find.
Well, yeah, and a lot of times what happens, Chris, is they may, because I used to have this guy that I used to talk to, and he says, we know full and well that we would actually technically lose this case. But what happens is we have so many resources, and we know that this would cost us $2 million to win this thing. And we'll just bury the other team because they don't have any money. And eventually they'll just make one mistake on one form, and the whole thing gets thrown out, actually. And we know it's not right. We know it's not just, but I'm telling you, that's just how the system works,
Well, yeah, and so this is where having money makes sense, right? It's not necessarily it's not necessarily that the law is different for rich people and not rich people. The difference is rich people have the resources to use the law to examine all the edges of the law.
All the edges, and literally, it's like they just bury the other side in paperwork. And literally, Chris, I'm telling you, one tiny nuanced checkbox, not exactly right, the whole case goes away.
Well, I mean, I was thinking of O.J. Simpson, right? And like a lot of the police testimony was thrown out because they didn't follow all the procedures, or they would say things that they shouldn't have said, and it's like, so this damning information against him couldn't be used against him because of a procedural error.
Because of tiny, and sometimes it's so minor that you're like, come on. I mean, that is not even. That's just wrong.
But that goes back to a principle that if you're gonna take away someone's rights, you need to follow all the rules as the government.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, that does make
The
sense.
onus is on you because you are the one who's taking away someone's rights.
Yeah, which is interesting. I also watched one other bit of news just today I was scrolling down about how that judge got arrested for helping or trying to prevent ICE. Did you see that news story? I go, that's interesting.
I saw an article about it. Say a picture of a judge with a gang member or something like that.
Yeah, I go, that's just kind of bad. So who knows where this is going to go? This is, man, Trump's definitely, no matter, I'll tell you, one thing Trump does is he pushes the boundaries on things. And
Well,
it's like, we
so
got
my
to sort of
concern
see.
is again, it goes back to what I don't see from him is a respect for the rule of law, which to me is another core principle of this country.
Yeah, that does bug me, actually. That bugs
So
me. Whatever.
whether or not the people that are getting deported or whatever should be or can be deported, I'll give all that to saying the government maybe has the right to do that. The
Yeah.
question is, did you check all the boxes before you sent them out of the country? Because if you
Yeah,
didn't,
that part
you
really
didn't follow
makes
the
me
rule of law.
worry about Trump,
Yeah.
actually, because I think I even heard a comment from him as like, "Oh, we don't need to worry about the Constitution in this case." It's like, so he's even talking about potentially deporting criminals here that are Americans. He's like, they're so bad, we just get them out of the country. I'm like, okay,
Yes.
okay, hang on, dude. Now, but that's how a wrecking ball talks, right? I mean, he's not highly nuanced.
Yeah, I mean, you could take one viewpoint and say, well, it'll all sort itself out when the legal cases come through.
Yeah,
But the
right.
question is how much damage was done in the process, right? How
Yeah,
many lives were negatively impacted or destroyed even as a
yeah,
result of it? And who's going to be held accountable for it? Because he can't be held accountable for it at the end of the day,
yeah.
right?
We had to find
So,
like an expert, like lawyer, attorney, or something that's skilled in this stuff. That'd be so fun to have a conversation about that and really start to understand how this works.
we'd have to be careful how we talk because I don't think they're going to want to talk about it from a certain slant. We need to make sure the slant comes across correct on
Well,
that.
that's okay. I mean, they could control the slant, but I was just kind of curious. I just want to know how. It's like there's the law and the theory, and then there's the actual practical execution, how it's actually done.
Yeah. Yeah,
Which
at
would
the end
be
of the day, the legal system is effed up as the government is effed up as everything because, we've had 200 and some odd years to build it up to what it is, and it hasn't been cold and cleaned. Just like
yeah,
Trump says he's cleaning up the government, the legal system needs cleaning up. Every
everything.
department, everything in the government, every institution in the U.S. probably needs some level of cleanup,
Yeah, some sort of something. Yeah.
right? And it's
All
just
right.
200 years of growth. That's what happens.
Yeah, that happens. It's like just like your spring cleaning on your house. Sometimes you just gotta clear out the old stuff. That you don't need anymore.
This weekend I trimmed back some of the tomato plants that have been growing for over a year and they were getting out of control. And so I cut off probably 70% of the plants so I could
Yeah,
get them manageable. And my
yeah,
wife was looking all everything I cut off. She was felt bad that I cut all this living, these living plants. I'm like, they'll grow better now that I've cut them down.
yeah. No, right, exactly. Because a plant only has a certain amount of energy, and you want to make sure that that energy is going into something that's going to be productive. That's
Yes,
going
and
to
it
be
grows in
valuable.
the yeah, it grows in the right area. My avocado tree in the backyard has got way too many branches and leaves, and my wife has this idea that if I cut off too many branches, it'll go into shock. And I'm like, yeah, but if it's got way too many branches and leaves, it's not going to grow any avocados.
But that's assuming you know what to cut and you strategize it through and you cut at the right time, right? I mean, you don't just randomly start cutting shit off, right? I mean, there should be a
Better to
strat.
do it in the winter time if you're doing it. Otherwise, you don't want to cut too much because you're going to shock it. Yeah,
Yeah,
there's a whole bunch of thought that goes into it. You don't just cut things down, but even if you did just cut it down, it would likely recover. It would just take longer.
yeah, right. But it
But
could die. I
but
mean, we have trees die here all the time. I mean, trees die
yeah,
constantly.
it's like when you're topping a tree, you don't want to top it more than 20% or whatever. There's all these kinds of
Yeah,
things about it.
all these
I mean,
rules.
the thing is, I understand all this stuff and I'm willing to make the cuts, but no, I get pushback all the time from my wife.
Yeah. That makes sense. All right, Chris.
All right, let's hit stop here. Boom.